Hello everyone, welcome to the new session of Propagation of Flowers Part 1. So in this session we are going to study about the propagation of a beautiful flower that is called as gladiolus. So what are the means of the propagation of gladiolus that we are going to study about in this session. Propagation technique in flowering and ornamental plants were introduced to solve the majority of the problems that hinder effective propagation of significant economic flowering and ornamental plants. So we required the flowering plant, especially the economic flowering plants and ornamental plants, in a great number. So to have such a number, we have to propagate those flowering plants. So some of the flowers that we propagate, like gladiolus, canna, chrysanthemum, roses and marigold. So these are some of the flowers that we propagate, right? Gladiolus was originally a subtropical flowering plant and can be easily grown in open fields. So now you can see here the flower gladiolus, how beautiful it is, and it is an originally that is subtropical flowering, but it is grown and it can be grown easily in open field. Factors important for the successful flowering are enough water. So this particular plant require enough water for its growing, enough light. So that is why it is grown in an open field, and protection against frost. The comb as well as the plant do not resist temperature of 0 degrees Celsius or below than that. So there is always a danger of this frost to this particular plant. So that is why there must be a protection against the frost. Asexual reproduction refers to the multiplication of plant from any vegetative part other than seed. So we generally follow the asexual reproduction because it is a quick to grow a new plant, right? And this asexual reproduction refers to the multiplication. What is the meaning of asexual reproduction? Multiplication of plant from any vegetative part. That could be a stem, that could be a root, right? But it is not grown from the seed, because the seed is developed from the sexual reproduction, and it takes time to plant to grow from the seed, right? It takes time to plant to grow from the seed. And also there is a problem that sometimes there is a disease in the establishment of the plant. There is an attack of insects, right? So establishment of a new plant that is grown from the seed is quite difficult, whereas asexual means is an easy way, and we can save the time also to grow a new plant. Asexual propagation in nature: some plants reproduce mainly vegetatively while others rely almost totally on the sexual reproduction. But all the plants are not grown from the asexual propagation method. There are some plants that can only be grown from the sexual reproduction method only. But yes, the plant which can be grown from the asexual method, we can take advantage of that, right? So if plant have a shortage of water or light during the expected flowering period, they will not flower at all, and flowers be smaller and less well formed, or will stop flowering altogether. So this is a very, very important point that is for the growing of the gladiolus, that if the plant is having the shortage of water and light duration, then the plant will not have a good flower, right? Either the flower will not occur, or if occur also, then the flower will be quite smaller than the normal or the healthy plant flower. Water storage can be due to shortage can be due to many causes: limited water supply, soil quality, soil temperature, air temperature, salt concentration in the soil, and pythium, that is a fungus or other root infecting disease. So water shortage can occur due to many reasons to this particular plant. Limited water supply: if the water supply is limited, then how can the plant get that much amount of water? soil quality. If the soil quality is not good, then also the plant will not be able to have enough amount of water. Soil temperature also affect the availability of water. Air temperature, salt concentration in the soil, right? And the microorganism. Now, the pythium is a type of fungus that causes disease in the plant, right? There are some other root infecting diseases also that also affect the availability of water to the plant. Okay, now receipt and storage. Corms are packed in nets and shipped in the plastic crates. So these particular plant corms is a type of underground stem. So from this corm, when it is buried inside the ground, new like this plant comes out, and you can cut this and have so many plants from one corm only. Right? So the corms are packed in nets. How it is sell? It is description about that. Corms are packed in nets and shipped in plastic crates. On arrival, start planting as soon as possible. So this corm is perishable. So when it is come out of the storage, then it should be planted as soon as possible. So no cold storage is required for the first 2-3 weeks, with corms kept in dry condition in a well ventilated room. So there is no need of storing this particular corm of this gladiolus in the cold storage. We can keep this corm in up to 2 to 3 weeks normally in dry condition, but that should be kept in proper ventilated room, and the temperature that must be around 17 to 20 degree Celsius. Longer term storage should be at 2 to 5 degrees Celsius at low humidity level. So if we want to store this corm for the longer duration of time, right, then we have to store it at 2 to 5 degree temperature, and humidity level must be quite low. Corms are supplied on the basis of their circumference as measured in centimeters. For cut flower production, we have available size that is 6 by 8, 8 by 10, 10 by 12, 12 by 14 and 14 onwards. So this is the corm, and their circumference is measured in the centimeter, and accordingly it is available in the sizes. Different sizes of the corms are available of this particular flower. The corm size is determining the factor in the quality of the flower. So this corm is very important, as its size determine the quality of the flower. So larger the flower, it means the corm is of good quality. So it develops from the good size of the corm. So good size of the corm give rise to a good quality of the flower as well. Smaller size corms are suited to the most ideal climatic conditions: moderate temperature, increasing light and no heavy rainfall. So this smaller sized corms, that is more suited to ideal climatic condition, that is for moderate temperature, not for the lower temperature but for the moderate temperature, increasing light, and it doesn't require not a heavy rainfall also. Larger size corms are more suitable for planting when conditions are less optimal. So it is having a larger stored food. So the plant which is came out from the corm, the food can be supplied for the longer duration of time for those plant, that developing plant, right? So this is more suitable for the planting condition that are less optimal to the growth of the flower. It is vital to choose the right variety and the size of corms, which is dependent on the expected growing conditions of around 70 to 80 days. So this size of the corm is very, very important. So according to the size of according to our availability of the waters, environmental condition, we have to choose this size of the corm. The climate, expected weather conditions, and soil type, etc. should be taken into consideration. So these are some of the point that climate, this is one of the factor that should be considered. Another, that is the soil condition, water availability. So these are some of the factors that should be determined, right? Soil type required for the growth. Gladioli can be grown with the good result on the moist soil types as long as the soil absorbs enough moisture from the groundwater during the dry period and also allows excess water to drain off quickly enough. So it can be gladioli can be grown with the good result with the moist soil. So soil should always be moist because it can absorb enough moisture from the groundwater and it can make available to the growing plant, right? And during the dry period also it allows excess of water to drain off quickly. The best soil is the moist and loose sandy loam. This is the best soil for this particular plant. Soil previously used for wet rice cultivation is also suitable for the gladioli. Heavy and moist clay-like soil is also workable and good drainage is very, very important for this plant. Weed-free, pathogen-free soil. Be sure that the soil is not having any type of weed or any type of pathogen in the soil. So weed control should be preferably start a few months before planting and can be controlled with Roundup, that is glyphosate, 6 weeks prior to the planting. So this we have already studied in one of the session, right? So I am not going to detail it about here, but yes, this is a compound, that is a man-made compound that can be used, right? And this is a glyphosate and we can apply this 6 weeks prior to the planting. Following planting but before the shoot appears, linuron can be also used. So these things we are doing just to get weed free. No weed will be there. So these are the some of the weedicides and this is the pathogen, makes the soil pathogen free. Do use weed control on the moist soil. After the gladiolus shoot emerges above the soil, the use of chemical weed control is no longer possible. So if you apply now weed, that could harm to these gladiolus also. So once chemical has been used earlier before the planting, that is okay, but after the establishment of the flower or when the shoot emerges from above the soil, then at that time weed should not be weedicide or the chemical weed should not be possible. Only use soil which is disease free. So this is important. We must grow this flower in disease free soil. If there has been a problem with the previous crop, do not use the same soil again. So if we know that the last year this gladiolus crop has been attacked by suppose Pythium species of fungus, so that could harm the last time it has been harmed by that fungus. So this time we are not going to use that soil again. For example, if previous crop, gladioli, carnations, potato, etc. had issues with the fusarium, rhizoctina, pythium or any other fungus, the soil must be steamed or disinfected using a specific chemical. So with the use of some chemicals or disinfectant, we can get rid of this fusarium, rhizoctonia and the pythium. These are all three different types of fungus that causes disease in the plant. Actually, if the potatoes has been grown and we found that the potato has been infected with this any of these three fungus, then it could harm to our gladiolus if we are growing it next season. The exact chemical used is dependent on the localized situation as well as the availability of the chemical. Pythium is usually caused by an insufficient balance in the soil between the harmless and the harmful fungus and the different types of bacteria. So this is one of the fungus that causes that is usually caused by an insufficient balance in the soil between harmless and harmful fungus. The best solution is to cow manure that is at a last 6 month old before cultivation. Pythium caused by high salt concentration can be reduced with the irrigation water and repeated several times. Ensure a proper balance between the water and air in the soil. So we must get ensured that there is a proper balance of water and air in the soil. Soil structure can be improved by adding organic matter well in advance of planting. For example, compost, leaves, straw, hay, or the stable manure from cows and not from the chicken. So these compost material can also be used, right, to add organic matter in the soil. Do not use a stable manure with heavy soil, as this makes the soil too sticky. So stable manure should not be added because it makes the soil very sticky and the air will not reach to the soil. The pH level that should be maintained between 6 to 7, and that is essential for the root development and the potential to absorb nutrient as well. So this is the soil acidity or alkalinity that should be maintained. That is between 6 to 7 pH level. Consistently adding organic matter in advance of planting can reduce or even eliminate acid or alkalinity problem. So if we are continually adding the organic matter in advance to the planting, that can even reduce or even eliminate acid or alkalinity problem. Taking soil sample at least 6 weeks prior to the planting is a recommended way to determine its pH. So before planting the gladioli, we can take a sample of the soil and we can determine, right, what is the pH, what is the salt concentration of the soil, what is the chlorine content and presence of nutrient in the soil, right? If the nutrient is not there much, then we have to add some manure in it, right? And we have to maintain the pH as well, salt concentration. These all things should be done prior 6 weeks if you are going if you are planning to grow gladiolus in a field. Gladioli do not benefit from a heavy application of fertilizer, but from the consistent availability of sufficient nutrient instant. So if you are applying a lot of heavy fertilizer, so that is not going to help this flower. That will not going to make available nutrient to the flower. Instead, if we consistent make availability of the sufficient nutrient, that is going to help this flower. To do otherwise is ill-advised due to the risk of excessively high salt concentration and lowering the disease resistance. So if we apply the lot of fertilizer, then it can cause the disease, lowering the level of disease resistance in the plant, and also there is excessively high salt concentration, chances of increasing the high salt concentration in the soil. If necessary, use the chemical fertilizer, that is with NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, in the composition of 2:2:3 with fluor. Fertilizer application requirements depends on climate and soil conditions. So according to the climate and soil condition, we can use this NPK fertilizer. It is not advisable to apply fertilizer before the 5th leaf of the plant appears, as this can disrupt the flower and cause the plant to stop flowering, especially if the temperature is high and humidity. So this is very, very important that we should not apply fertilizer before the 5th leaf of the plant appears. Upon emerging of the fifth leaf, some nitrates can be applied to enlarge the flower spikes. So these flowers occur in the spikes like this. It occurs in these spikes. This is the spike like this, right? So if we apply some nitrates in the soil after upon the emerging of the fifth leaf, then this can increase the length of this spike. This length of the spike can be increased, and that can have a more number of flowers. So liquid fertilizer is preferred at this stage as it is immediately absorbed by the plant. Always take soil sample before planting so that fertilizer can be applied accordingly. No use of taking soil sample once the flower has been established, once the plant has been established. So always take soil sample before planting. Rooting of gladioli. The rooting of the gladioli culms is the best at soil temperature of between 12 to 18 degrees centigrade. Yes, the rooting of the soil culms is best at the time when the temperature of the soil is in the range of 12 to 18 degrees Celsius. Avoid higher soil temperature by watering the soil several times before planting. So we can avoid the higher soil temperature by watering by number of times. If the soil temperature is higher, the culms will grow a shoot and less root. Thus, usually influences the final flowering stage, as without good roots and high quality of flower is impossible, because if the root is in a good form, then only it can absorb a good amount of water, and then only the plant could be healthy and it can bear a good size of flower. So if the root is not in a proper good storage, good lengthwise, so they cannot absorb the water properly, right? So, and how it happened? Just because of the soil temperature increasing. So if the soil temperature is higher, it causes culms to grow more shoot and less roots, right? So that can affect the final flowering stage. When temperature are 35 degrees Celsius or higher, using preferably white shadow nets, 50% white shadow net will help cool down the soil. So we can have this shadow net also that can reduce the temperature of the soil. After 2 leaves have appeared, the shadow nets should be removed and only be replaced when plants have 5 leaves. So when the plant is having 5 leaves, we can have this net again. But after the 2 leaves have appeared, we can remove this shadow nets. Open field far from the trees or the buildings, avoiding shady areas and lice or other insects falling from the branches. So what is the location of the plant for this gladiolus? It should be away. This open field should be away from the trees or buildings, right? Why? Because if there is a tree and building, then there must be some insects that could harm this flower. Planting areas at high elevations of between 500 to 1500 meters are identical, because it is having the best soil quality availability, and also the temperature of the soil is less. So at that time, condition, this plant can flourish well. Lower land areas are also suitable. The planting area should be flat as much as possible. Planting time. The best time of planting gladioli culms is when the soil is cool, when the sufficient water can be supplied and the light intensity is increasing. So what is the best time? Gladioli culm is when soil is cool. So we can sow this culm in the soil when the soil is cool. Sufficient water is available that could be supplied to the plant, right? And the light intensity is increasing, then this plant can flourish well. Planting in another season is also possible as long as there is a sufficient water and soil texture suitable for tillage. So when it can be, this particular plant can be grown to the other season also, but make sure that you have enough water availability for the plant, and also the soil's texture is suitable for the growth of the plant. Planting during the rainy season is also possible with the erection of the sideless covering above to ensure plants remain more or less dry. Bigger sized comb, that is 10 to 12 centimeters, should be used. Light intensity is lower at this time too. Plant comb in soil that is sufficiently moist but not overly wet. So this plant comb which is present in the soil, that should be sufficiently moist, but it should not be over wet because the comb can be damaged. Irrigate the soil a few days before planting. So before planting, soil should be irrigated so that the temperature of the soil should be balanced. The availability of the water in the soil should be good. If the soil is not moist enough after planting, irrigate to avoid problems during the development stage in the first week after planting. If the soil is too wet, postpone planting until it is less waterlogged. So we should not plant gladiolus, a comb of the gladiolus, when it is too wet, when the field is too wet, or when the soil is too wet, right? So overlogging is not good for the growing of this flower. Comb can be planted on a raised beds or ridges to supplement natural rainfall. Comb should not be planted too deep. A planting depth should be just 5 centimeters is sufficient. So you should not deep put this comb because the plant will not emerge out. So it is recommended that the comb should be placed 5 centimeters deep in the soil. More soil can be added later. Applying a mulch of compost straw, pine needles, etc. could help control soil temperature and keeping the soil cooler during the warmer weather. So if it is a warmer weather, then we can cover the soil with the help of mulch or the pine needles, so that can minimize the evaporation of water and that can maintain the soil temperature. Harvesting. Now the flower is there. Now we have to harvest. Flower stems are ready to harvest as soon as the lowest flower bud display color. Do not wait until the flowers open up to avoid damage for transportation, as we have to transport from one place to another this particular flower. So once the lowermost flower emerges, we can harvest the flower, because it takes time to transport from one place to another also. Harvest by pulling each stem completely, that is with the comb, out of the soil by hand. So you have to take whole flower plant, that is taking out comb also, and cut the stem 5 centimeters above the comb. So we can have a cut that is above the cut the stem 5 centimeters above the comb. Make neat bunches of 10 centimeters of the same height and bind each bunch with the string. Leftover combs are waste and should be disposed of in a transparent manner. So combs are meant for one-time flowering production, and that is recommended that do not replant and grow from the previously used comb. During harvesting process, packaging, storage and the transport is important to always keep harvested stem upright. So it is recommended that keep the flowering stem upright so the flowers could not get damaged. If left in a horizontal or the sloping position, the tip of the flower stem will start to be bent upward. After a while, this bend in the stem becomes more rigid. Later, when the stem is placed in an upright position, again the tip of the flower spike will remain crooked. So it is recommended that do not keep the flower horizontal. Always keep the flower stem upright. So this is all about the flower propagation of the flower gladiolus. We will have some more session to come study about some other flower also. Thank you so much.